Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's resume and portfolio review. We're so happy to have you here. Thank you so much to all of the representatives on today's call to take the time to review DFA students' materials so that we can, train the next generation of design leaders to be very prepared for whatever professional application comes their way. Today's format is going to be a group introduction and a storytelling opportunity from the YMCA representatives to let us know a little bit more about who's on the call, what type of life lessons you've learned from reviewing materials, applying to jobs, and being in the professional workforce, so that we can learn from your experience. And then the latter half of this, we're going to go into breakout rooms to review materials, those amazing portfolios. We ask, if you have your capability, it's great that everyone has their Zoom on. We ask that you're muted when you're not talking, so we can, make sure everyone's can hear each other and the like. So without further ado, I think for the way that we're going to do these first introductions, Nico, you can kick it off and then popcorn around. Everyone has 5 minutes to review. I'll keep time and just put a note in the chat when you have, your time's up and things like that. But
that sounds great. And this is where you want me to do my my resume tips as well?
Yes. So the format for these introductions: introduce who you are, what YMCA, what you do, and then your 2 to 3, quick tips and the story behind them, and then share out any opportunities you have for the DFA community to know about.
Got it. It's saying that I am unable to screen share because someone else is sharing.
I'm still sharing the music. Can you hear it?
Oh, weird. Okay, got it.
No, now try it. I think you'll be okay.
Okay. All right. Can you? All right. Yes. What are you seeing right now?
We're seeing top 3 resume tips.
Top 3 resume tips. Awesome. Okay, so so my name is Nico. I am with YMCA of the USA, and YMCA of the USA is the National Resource Office for all YMCAs in the US, and we also maintain relationships with YMCAs in 120 countries around the world. So, and a lot of what I do is I work in our division, in our diversity and inclusion and global team at YUSA, and I've been there about 15 years now. So a lot of the resumes that I see tend to be people who are coming in to be interns, people who are seeking to do a volunteer stint overseas at another YMCA. And I also review a lot of resumes for staff that we hire, but also for individuals who are looking to apply for, like a scholarship, like a kind of a cohort opportunity that we will have. Like we have these learning cohorts as well that go for a year. So over that time, I've seen a number of things on resumes that I think some of these are things that you probably will hear from others because they tend to kind of be the same things. One is just keep it to one page. I know it's tempting, to want to list everything you've done since high school, but if you can just keep it to one page. And the reason for that is because most hiring managers really don't have that much time, and their attention span is probably about a page. So unless you're an academic and you can, you have a ton of publications you need to show, and this isn't a CV, it's a resume. Resume means short. So so that's my first one. The second one is to really try to tailor it to the organization as much as you can. Depending on who you're sending your resume to, try to find out from them, like what are some of the keywords and what is some of the language that they use, right? What you may call a a program director, they may call, a subject matter expert or something. So that's not a good example, but the idea is that you want to try to find out, like, what is it that they are looking for so that it translates for them immediately. The last thing I would say is stress your impact, and don't just list job descriptions. So we see that a lot, that it's very easy to say, here was what my job was. That's great that you want to talk about what your job was, but what did you do, right? Ask yourself, to what end? If you're just listing job responsibilities, ask yourself, well, what did I accomplish with this? What did I make happen um, with with this? So I have a couple bonus ones I'm going to sneak in here, because I know you said three, but I'm going to make it not three. Um, so consistency in formatting, what I mean by that is there's so many resumes that come in where, like, the top half is in Times New Roman and the bottom half is in Calibri. Fix that up, right? Um, check spelling, even if you have spell check on most word processing things, make sure that that's cleaned up, because there's some things that just won't catch. And then don't overindulge, right? Like, don't say, you know, I was amazing and I did all this. Yes, you were amazing, but only list the things that you were responsible for, right? Don't go making up stuff to make yourself sound more fantastic than you think you are. So I'll stop there, Ross, because I think that's my time. And then in the breakout, I can share. I have a couple of examples I wanted to share. So that's it.
Thanks so
Can I
much,
ask a
Nico.
question really quickly?
Yes,
Yes.
totally.
Okay, so one of your points was to tailor it to the organization. So would you recommend keeping like a how would you recommend exactly doing that? Like keeping like a running list of a bunch of different things that you've done and kind of selecting what you want for specific applications, or how would you
Yes.
recommend doing
Yeah, great question. So I think there would be two things. One would be selecting and elevating and maybe like putting up in priority some of the things you've done that will be more relevant to this organization you're applying to, right? So if you're applying for an aquatics position, maybe the first thing you list up there is, I was a lifeguard this summer, right? That's what I really want to highlight. I really want that to pop. The other thing is, I think, is the other way I'm thinking about tailoring it to the organization is in terms of language. In the why, we like the word aquatics, right? But where you came from, you may have been a lifeguard or a swim instructor with, the JCCs, or with, some other organization, and they call it swimming. So because you're writing this to the YMCA, you're like, they use this word a lot. So I'm going to say I was an aquatics instructor. So that way it catches the eye of the person reading it right away.
Thank you.
Yeah, great question, Marissa.
Yeah, Marissa, Sarah, keep asking questions if something comes up. With this, we can be more conversational, just given the size of this. But up next, Kim.
Okay, I did not do a PowerPoint, so I just have some notes that I wanted to share. So my name's Kim Jazz Ramirez, and I'm the Financial Development Director at the YMCA in Marshalltown, Iowa. And, I came to the Y 20 years ago. I actually started at McGaw YMCA, which is in Evanston, which is where Northwestern is. So I guess, yeah, you probably know it, Ross. And I actually, I have a degree actually in counseling psychology, and I always wanted to work with kids. So I thought the Y is a great place for that. So I started as a summer camp director, then became a youth fitness director. And, after 20 years, just having been with the Y and seeing everything that it does, I've been able to move into a lot of different positions. So now what I do is fundraising, which I never thought I would be doing, but fundraising and marketing for the Y, and I really love it. So I've worked at 4 YMCAs, and so I'm from Iowa. That's how I ended up back here in Iowa. Let's see. So I guess kind of moving on a little bit to recommendations. Nico covered some really good ones, so I don't know how much more I can add. I like the font thing that he said. I mean, don't use script. I want to be able to read it, and I know I know I'm usually thinking with my resume. I want it to stand out. You know, I want it to catch their eye, but it's got to be readable. You just kind of got to balance that eye catchingness with, you know, just something they can read. So what really stands out for me is that you attach, if you're sending your resume, you have a cover letter in your email, or you attach a cover letter, or that you send me an email saying, hey, I just want to make sure you got my resume, you know. So the fact that you're checking in, you're going to be top of mind for me. You're not, and it's not, you know, asking anything more than that, other than did you get my resume, or just want to make sure that you got this, and here's a little bit about me. It's not putting me off, it's not taking up too much of my time, but it's showing me that you're definitely interested in knowing more about this job. So and then I guess as far as we were just going to talk a little bit about what opportunities there are within the Y. As you can tell, obviously, it's been a career for me, so I think it's a fantastic place. There's a lot of part-time positions, and I know you're probably going to be looking for full-time, but it's a great way to get your foot in the door. And this is true of the Y, and probably true of a lot of places. Once you get in, even if it is part-time, when you show your value and your commitment, that employer is going to find a spot for you. So, you know, if you can kind of hold on, or if you've got some other way to supplement your income, that can be a great way to just get your foot in the door, no matter what it is. So, yeah, I think that's kind of my bit.
Thanks so much, Kim. And then
Sure.
Going back, Nico, if you have any other opportunities too that you didn't mention, just feel free to put them in the chat, or we can bring them up later. But up next, Nikki and Jawanza, I know you're going to do a joint presentation.
Yep. Hold on, Jawanza is bringing up our PowerPoint.
Yeah. Give me 1 second. Right. Sharing screen. 3, 2, and ta-da! All right. So we're gonna have Nikki lead us off with these first two, and then I will bring us back home.
Yeah, sure. So we're going to take a little longer because we're piggybacking together. So I'm Nikki Rosenbluth. I'm the Vice President for Learning and Development at the YMCA of Metro Atlanta. But I've had multiple careers. I was a Catholic school teacher for 7 years. And I also worked for 7 years for the Bahamas Tourist Office in New York City. And I'm just glad to tell you I'm alive today because I thoroughly enjoyed New York. And then I stumbled onto the Y by accident, only intended to be there for a year. But here I am. I started in 1994 in a small Y in North Carolina, and it's 2021, and I'm still working for the Y, just in a different location. So we wanted to give you some tips. So if you could just go to the next slide, please. So there are some hidden ideas sometimes. I will also tell you I spent 14 years with the Y in recruiting and talent acquisition. So I have a lot of stories to tell you of what not to do, but some hidden ideas that sometimes when you don't have work experience that you don't consider is, you know, did you do work with scouts or any leaders clubs, any school or community volunteer work that has trackable hours as somebody that we can get to for a reference. Like, for example, my son is a freshman in college right now, and he had over 780 hours of volunteer hours, which shows that he's committed. Are you involved in any school and college clubs? Again, that lends that you're committed, that you are part of somebody that joins clubs, and that you are committed to a work ethic of staying with the club. Did you have any entrepreneurial skills? Like if you don't have any work experience, did you have dog walking? Did you do lawn mowing? Did you do babysitting, tutoring? And then all of those have transferable skills. People don't have you come back if you are not reliable or responsible. And then, you know, for babysitting, you need specific skills. You need to be funny and good with the kids and be a good caretaker and responsible. So these are all skills that you should highlight. Were you in any athletic or academic teams? Did you have a particular role like captain that speaks to leadership roles? And any awards and honors that you may have received? That gives us an idea of who you are as a person. Like, did you have an art exhibit? And any special home projects that elevated innovation, like did you bring something to college or did you do projects that really showed that you can think creatively and innovatively? Next slide. Okay. So here's some best practices for resumes. Any employment that you have that have roles or tenure, like if I were to use my son as an example again, he's been a year and a half at a company. He started as the sort of gopher at the company. He got promoted to the salesperson. He got then promoted to the mobile, like when they go out on road shows, he works for a running company, and he got a raise. So for him, he just looks at it as I worked at this company, but really he's had increasing roles of responsibility, and that should be reflected in your job because that says in your resume, because that says what people think about you. Did you participate in any internships that were either at companies or through local government or local districts or colleges? Any national opportunities, take advantage of those, even if it's on site at your college. Have you attended any key trainings, career workshops, and career tracks? Again, if you don't have any work experience to put or relevant work experience, you want to say that you've really been getting yourself ready for the job market. And any prep work that you might have done in order to be ready for potential employment or internship. So if I were to give you a tip, I had my first job out of college already set up at Christmas. So I went home at Christmas, I went ahead and applied. I knew I had a job. So once I graduated, so that was my prep work to go ahead and sort out my situation over Christmas. So I came out of college right into teaching at Catholic school. Make sure that you've spoken with your references in advance before listing. And I always used to get weird references. So the reference should be somebody that could speak to your work and a personal reference as well. But it really should be somebody who could speak to your work so that when we ask them about what your work ethic is, what your skills are, that they can reference that. And again, if you have no work, use some of the suggestions that I have given you before, like babysitting or volunteer work that you have given, because they can also speak to your skill set. Jawanza?
Yeah. So here, I'm going to take the picture off for a second for introductions. Hi, I'm Jawanza Barrio Lumumba. I'm with our national office at YUSA, and I've worked for the Y for 18 years. And so I started in high school because I was working at a job that met at the Y, but not for the Y. And they know me from either camp or volunteering, and they asked me to help out like one day a week. And so that then evolved because I was great customer service because I'm wonderful. They then asked me to keep working part-time. And so I was like, sure, I'll keep working. And then I remember when I went to college, I was like, I'm good, I don't need to work for the Y. And then during my first week, I lost my work studies through my school. And so I just went to the nearest Y, wrote a letter in addition to my application that said hey, I'm from San Francisco. I worked for the Y for a few years. It would be really smart to hire me. I go to the local college. And so the person who hired me didn't want to hire me initially, but his other person was like, this person's going to be a great connection to this whole university that we don't really engage with. And so I got brought on doing membership while I was in school. And I eventually leveled up to become a supervisor. And I ended up pulling in a number of other students to work for the YMCA in that area. And so that's all within my first few years. Fast forward, I'm worked for Ys in Washington, California, and I'm at the national office having done an array of different jobs that are not directly connected to the work that I do now, which is in diversity, inclusion, and global engagement. But what I've done over the years is identify Ys that I want to work for, where I know that I can skill up a bit, learning things relating to supervision of people, learning about budgets, learning about how things work on a regional level, on a national level, and those were skills I picked up in addition to my primary job functions. And so I've been an admin person, I've been an auditor, I've been a finance director, I've been a membership director. I've taken different jobs that have helped me develop leadership capacity and skills, as well as skills that you need to have for higher level positions, including like budgeting, including conflict resolution. So there's a nice variety of things I picked up and have then sort of identified what are places and spaces I need to grow in order to get to the job that I want to be in, which was this job. So it took me a minute, but I got into the type of position I wanted to. But what was great about the Y is there's a lot of opportunities to navigate into different roles in order to get there. And in many of my positions, but specifically the last role I was in, I was the HR, finance, and admin director for a branch. And so I worked with a lot of staff on their hiring practices for their teams, as well as I did some interviewing for a sort of an intern position that we regularly had at our branch. And so I would go down to the organization that we got our interns from, and I would usually sit through like close to 10 different interviews in the course of an hour. Not oftentimes giving feedback, but at least looking through the resume, interviewing them, and then doing some follow-up work. So I have a lovely amount of experience when it comes to just sort of different employment opportunities. And so here are a few sort of opportunities when it comes to where to find jobs. And so there's a few on here that I'll sort of go through, but like 3 that I'll sort of dive a little deeper into. And so the first is just sort of, if your college has any sort of employment or workforce development opportunities, they are a really great place to get connected. And it may be an opportunity for your college to facilitate that opportunity for you. But it's also looking to see, are there organizations that are specifically looking for placing vocational opportunities or workforce development opportunities. And so as you if you ever find yourself stuck looking for programs where you can opt into something that will help place you someplace else. Volunteering for an organization that you have an interest in and does not have available jobs is a great opportunity to learn more about that organization, for them to learn a bit more about you, so that way when an opportunity does come up, you will be at the forefront of their mind. I would say think of it more as programmatic volunteering, because if you opt to be in like on a board or some sort of volunteering position within an organization that is involved with their structure, that becomes a little bit more tricky. But if there's more ground level volunteer opportunities or programmatic volunteer opportunities, that's a great way to get involved. Follow companies that you're interested in, email them about sort of questions or opportunities so they can learn a little bit more about you. We're in the day and age of social media, so also elevate some of the companies that you have an interest in, follow them. LinkedIn allows you to follow specific people too, so that might be a really great way for you to be able to just sort of get an idea of what type of articles are elevating, conversations are trying to start, and to really get engaged around what that company's interest is in. Even within that, and this isn't listed here, but within LinkedIn, if you don't have a LinkedIn profile, that's a great way for you to put your resume out there in a way that is virtually visible. And then there's particular features that can indicate that you are looking for work. And so that will help recruiters know when they're looking through the page to be able to be like, oh, this person's interested in finding a job. And you can indicate sort of where your specialty areas are, so that way they know what type of job you're looking for. Network within your family, within your neighbors, within your general network of people that you have. It could be folks that you've met during your collegiate experience. It could be people from your high school that are now in different roles, but tap into that network and don't be afraid to sort of reach out and reactivate some connections. Sometimes go deeper than LinkedIn when it comes to jobs that you're really interested in, and explore those websites of the companies so you can get a deeper idea of what they are interested in. And then network and during events. And so an event like this, as an example, if there's someone of interest, private message them and be like, hey, I'd love to learn more, and get their email address. Or if it's a conference of some sort or some type of event, never hesitate to reach out to collect business card information or just an email and do a little bit of follow-up work. And then for the resume don'ts, just be mindful of how you're presenting your resume. I would say you also want to just be careful of what information you're including, especially if you don't need to offer it up. You want to be very mindful that your design of your resume isn't too much. Like a fancy resume is kind of nice, but if you aren't going for design, then you don't want it to be too overly complicated. You want it to be sort of simple, you want it to be clear, and you don't want it to get lost in the fonts or the pretty design or any of that. Make sure you're highlighting your skills, even if they're not connected to a specific job. Just be aware of your grammar, your spelling, your typos. Be mindful of the email and voicemail that you have set up and make sure it's a professional one in case people do reach out. Don't forget to list those references and make sure you've spoken to them recently and make sure that they're ready to represent you. And don't list things that you don't need to, such as your home address or GPA for school. If they're not asking for that information, you don't need to include it. And it sometimes allows employers to discriminate slightly if you are offering that information up. So just be mindful of what you are not needing to share and make sure to be mindful of that. And those are my tips and tricks.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Joanza and Nikki, and then Marissa. I know you have to head off, so thanks for joining us, and the rest
Bye,
of us.
Marissa.
Thank you.
Nice meeting.
Nice
And
to
then-
meet all of you.
Yes, and then welcome Abdallah. Thanks so much for calling in from Northwestern. So Kim, Maga, YMCA. Abdallah, you're in the same neighborhood, or at least used to be. Up next, we're going to hear from Aaron, and then Scott, and we'll go into our breakout rooms.
Great. Hi, y'all. I'm Erin Grayson. I'm the Vice President of Human Resources and Leadership Development for the YMCA of Central New York. So that's in the middle of New York State. And Syracuse is the city in which our main branch is in. I grew up in the Y and decided that I wanted to work for the Y when I was in high school. So I actually went to school that's what I went to school for at Springfield College. So my minor was in YMCA management. At the time, I wanted to do teens and camp. So degrees in youth development and rec man, and then fell in love with training and development. And was able to do that with my first job after my master's degree at a YMCA conference center. So I did training and development for other folks that came to the Y in which I worked, and did many different jobs. I will second what Joanza said. I got lots of experience in all different kinds of jobs. They all happen to be within the Y, but lots of different things that made it very, my experience diverse. And then when I left the YMCA Conference Center, which I worked at in the Adirondacks called Silver Bay, I was like, where does leadership development live if I'm not going to be at a conference center? And it lives in HR. So then I switched directions and focused on HR, and then have been in a few different jobs in HR in my Y career. So I'm actually going to give a little bit of different advice. I'm actually glad that I got to go towards the end. Scott's probably like, yeah, because it's like, okay, I don't need to talk about that. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about prepping for and looking for jobs, and then prepping your resume and or cover letter that will just emphasize what was already shared, and then also helping get ready for your interview. So when I work with staff, and when I worked at the conference center, I worked with a lot of college students and worked with them to help them understand that you're interviewing and picking a job just as much as they're picking you. So I always advise with working with anyone of, you want to do the prep work to do some self-awareness work to help understand what you value, what you're passionate about, because those are jobs that you want to look for to align with who you are. Because the reality is if you are able to understand what you bring to the table as far as passion, mission, whatever we want to call it, values, you align that with an organization mission, that's where you have a sustainable partnership, right? And if you want, I can give Russ my info. I have a lot of workshops and exercises to do to help with this kind of stuff. So you want to figure that out so that when you're then doing the research and finding jobs that you're like, oh, this sounds exciting, you're able to say, oh, this aligns, right? Aligns with who I am and what I bring to the table. So that's the first step. And then when you find something that you're like, okay, this seems to align with who I am, the exercise that I would recommend that you do is to go through that job posting and pull out the knowledge, skills, abilities, and competencies that they're listing in that job. So on the one side of a piece of paper or one side of a, Word doc, you type all that stuff out. And on the other side of that, come up with examples, like proven examples of how you've done those things. And if you haven't, totally okay, right? You want to acknowledge that, to say, haven't done that, because you want to be, upfront in who you are when you're interviewing. But the thing that I look for when I'm interviewing people is when I say, can you tell me about a time that you were, able to bring a project from point A to point B? And how was that? I want to hear specific examples and proven experiences of how you've done that. And it doesn't have to be necessarily in a work. It could be an internship. It can be in a club. It can be in a volunteer experience. But I want to know and hear about how you did that, so that there's that proven example. Because a lot of times, and nothing against old school interviews, but they'll ask if you were in a situation, right? And they'll ask a hypothetical, even then answer, well, in my experience, I've been able to. And also know it's totally okay to say, you know what, I haven't done that. Can I share with you what I would do, right? And to be upfront about that. But to make sure when you're prepping, both with writing your cover letter and to tailor your resume, as others shared, you want to make sure that you're speaking that same language. You want to use that information in those two documents, right? And then when you go into the interview, to have those examples and have notes with you. It's also okay to totally take a minute to think about answering a question before you answer it. That just would tell me that you're being very thoughtful and intentional, which is something that I would look for in a staff member when I'm hiring them. And then also know that it's really important, when you understand your values or what's important to you, that you ask questions in your interview to say, can you share with me, if let's say learning or development is really important, can you share with me what your staff development program looks like, or opportunities for stretch projects to help me develop as a leader and continue to grow, if that's something that's important to you, because you're interviewing them as much as they're interviewing you. And you want to know when you leave of like, is this a good fit for me or not? Right. And so you want to make sure that not only are you have those proven examples and you did that exercise, so you go into that interview feeling like, I got this and I feel really confident about what I'm bringing to the table, but I'm also going to ask them questions so that I know if I move forward in this, that it's going to be that sustainable partnership that's going to help me grow and develop into the leader that I want to be. And so that's my super high level on that. And Ross, I'm more than happy to share any of the exercises that I use with our interns and staff that we work with. So that's what I have to share. And then at the Y, know that there are so many opportunities and so many different things that you can find jobs in. We're about to post for an inclusion director, which is a director that works with individuals with disabilities, to we're going to need a videographer, right? So know that the Y is a very diverse organization, and there's all different kinds of jobs, because our role in the YMCA is to meet the needs of our community, and each community is different. So know that if you're excited and feel like you're like, oh, those people, they seemed great. Know that there's lots of different opportunities all over, not only just all over the United States, but other opportunities and possible volunteer opportunities that you talked to Nico about all over the world. So yeah.
Thanks so much, Erin. And yes, please share all of those, and we'll send out all of the resources from everybody in a follow-up. But last but definitely not least, Scott.
Hey all, I'm Scott. I work with the Florida State Alliance of YMCAs, which is essentially the state YMCA, right? Like we have a national office, we have a state office, and then we have our local Ys. And I serve as the chief of staff, which is nothing more than project management. Really, like I cannot tell you how much project management and particularly design thinking. I was very heavily involved in design thinking in college. So I'll kind of talk a little bit about how I use design thinking for resumes, because I think that's not a lot of people think in the design thinking realm, and it can really help people. So a couple of things real quick is I've worked for the Y since I was about 16 in some capacity, whether that's part-time or full-time. But I've done a lot around, I did some work around entertainment in Orlando, Florida. And then I actually decided to take a complete turn and go into politics. So I ran a lot of resumes, or a lot of campaigns, and then actually went and worked for the House Speaker for a couple of years in communications. And then it came back to the Y because I missed nonprofit work. And then, that's kind of the history there. So I think everyone's brought up a lot of really good things. I've heard like a lot of skill-based learning, really focus on those skills. So I guess I'll shift the narrative and say how I did my how I took design thinking into my resume writing when I was in college was I looked at everything as a journey map. So if you've used journey maps, a resume is a tool to tell a story, right? So it's not necessarily, I think we always look at this like plain piece of paper, a very like bullet point list, and that's needed, but it's a story too. So I want to take an idea I think Aaron shared around looking at the job posting. And then I want you to layer in AI, because I think that's really big right now. Is a lot of companies, I'm not sure that I've heard of any Y that's doing it, are taking AI and running resumes through AI. So basically what it's doing is taking the posting, it's taking the maybe the job description that you don't see, and saying match words up to experiences. So that's where that's going to come into play. And that's also where it comes in as a design thinker. I always want to make something really pretty and stand out, but that's also where that resume tip that someone said earlier is don't make it look pretty, make it look standard. So those robots take those choice words and put you at the top of the list. But then I want you to take the concept of journey mapping and say, I think it was Marissa that might have asked something earlier, and she's like, when Nico was talking, she was like, do we list everything and kind of go on there? And I would say yes. In my brain, the way my brain works is it's a journey map, right? I want to map out my entire journey of all of the skills that I've done. And then I want to take those skills or take those sticky notes and match them up to build my resume. So I have this giant journey that I'm taking out some of those life skills to kind of build those things. The other piece I will say is numbers speak volumes. I know someone had said that before, but if you're talking about, say you're applying for a job in innovation or in transportation or in entertainment, right? Being able to take the number of projects you've done in design thinking or the number of things that you've done in that area and tie it to both qualitative and quantitative data, because I think that will pick a lot of those AIs, but also it stands out in a resume when someone's skimming and they see numbers, they're going to focus a little bit more on that. And I think the last thing I would say too is when we're thinking about like the concept of a resume being a story, right? Looking at, I think Aaron talked a little bit about like the interview, looking at how you would respond, think ahead if they ask questions about your journey. Can you explain, I see on here that you took a class on blank. Can you talk to me a little bit more about that? So by doing a journey map and thinking some of that through, you're able to already think through what that response might be. And so I think if you could take a lot of the things that you've learned with DFA and pair that with the resume process, you'll find it very fun as opposed to sitting down and putting some words on a piece of paper and hoping for the best.
Great. Thank you so much, Scott. And thank you, Nikki, Jawanza, Aaron, Kim, and Nico for your wisdom and experience and for taking the time to help us learn how we can be prepared for these moments in our lives when we are putting together these applications, preparing our resumes, and in presenting our portfolios.